Charleston was glowing that evening, the kind of golden, low-country light that makes even betrayal look romantic. The breeze off the harbor was warm, laced with honeysuckle and salt. I was dressed for grace, not war. But as I stepped into the Langston family's private dining room at the Carolina Club, the seat that should have had my name on it was missing. No place card, no chair, no acknowledgment. 12 people, one long table, and me, standing. Oops, must have miscounted, my husband Andrew chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. His mother, Catherine Langston, the queen bee of Charleston society, didn't even glance at me. She just picked up her wine and smiled like nothing was amiss. I smiled too, but mine was sharp enough to cut linen. "Seems I'm not family," I said, my voice steady despite the firestorm rising in my chest. And then I turned and walked out, every step deliberate, every eye on my back. They had no idea what I had planned, but they would. I'm Samantha Ellis, but people call me Sam. I wasn't born into money or tradition. I built my life on grit, long hours, and a knack for managing chaos. I run my own boutique hospitality firm, events, luxury travel, destination celebrations. I know how to create moments people don't forget, and I've always known how to stay quiet and be professional. Until now. My husband Andrew was Charleston royalty, Langston blood, polo trophies, family portraits dating back to the Confederacy. I should have known from the moment I met his mother that I wasn't the match she'd pictured. I wasn't blonde, I wasn't born in the historic district, and my father didn't own land stretching for miles. But Andrew had pursued me. Hard. He said I was different, real. Said he was tired of country club clones. I believed him. We got married 3 years ago under live oaks wrapped in fairy lights. It looked like a dream. Felt like one too, for a while. But looking back, it was always on their terms. I changed more than I realized just to fit in. My career became a little hobby, my ideas dismissed at family events. Still, I smiled. I adapted. I let them chip away at me one comment at a time, until they decided I didn't even deserve a seat at the table. Catherine's 65th birthday celebration was supposed to be the grand event of the spring social season, a week of parties, luncheons, a garden tour, and a final gala dinner at the club. I had helped plan it, of course, quietly behind the scenes. That was what they liked about me, useful, invisible. But what they didn't know was that I'd seen the emails, the draft prenuptial updates, the texts between Andrew and Brooke Landry, the girl he dated before me, the one Catherine still invited to brunch. They were going to serve me humiliation with a side of champagne and call it civility. And so, standing outside that exclusive club, in heels I'd worn for Catherine's sake, I made a decision. I took out my phone and logged into the event dashboard. I had 30 minutes before dessert. That was more than enough. They thought they'd made their point. But I was about to show them how an outsider with nothing to lose can burn an empire down, quietly, elegantly, and on time. Let the games begin. The rest of the family didn't bat an eye. Of course they hadn't. These were the people who'd spent the last 5 years pretending my success didn't count because it wasn't inherited. They'd never asked how I started my firm, never wondered how a girl from the wrong side of Savannah managed to become one of Charleston's top wedding planners, but they sure liked to benefit from it. Dinner at the Marshside Club was supposed to be a formality, a quick bite before the big celebration tomorrow. Catherine made it seem like an afterthought when she invited me, but now it was clear it had been staged. The table seated 12. There were 12 names on the reservation, 12 places set. I wasn't one of them. Andrew laughed like it was a joke. Guess we miscounted. But it wasn't a joke. Not to them. To them, I was the outsider, the interloper, the woman who should have known her place. Catherine's smug expression said it all. She was already imagining the stories she'd tell over tea with her charity board, how I left in a huff, how I couldn't handle the pressure of being part of the Goldwyn family. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I stood, smooth and steady, and said, "Seems I'm not family," loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. And then I walked out. Outside, the humid Charleston evening wrapped around me like a weighted blanket, but I didn't break. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out my phone, opened the planning app I'd built from scratch, and began typing. In 30 minutes, the entire event would be undone. I wasn't just Samantha Rivera, the girl they never fully accepted. I was the architect of everything they were about to lose. The Goldwyn family dinner, the yacht party, the weekend at the waterfront estate, every vendor, every venue, every fine detail had my fingerprints on it. And I was about to wipe them clean. First, I canceled the catering, then the yacht charter, then the estate reservation. I tapped through contracts with ruthless efficiency, detaching each string like a puppeteer cutting ties. My company held every deposit, every booking, and all of it was under my control. By the time I reached my car, I'd already received 3 missed calls. Andrew's name lit up the screen again. I declined. He could wait. I drove through the quiet back streets of Charleston, winding past cobblestone lanes and Spanish moss-draped oaks. My chest ached, not with regret, but with restraint. I had given so much: my time, my loyalty, my trust. And in return, they handed me humiliation wrapped in a linen napkin. Back at my hotel suite, I kicked off my heels and poured a glass of wine. My hands were still steady. That surprised me. The texts started coming in. Andrew: Sam, what the hell just happened? Andrew: come back, we'll fix it. Andrew: don't be like this. Catherine tried too. Her tone was different, polished, ironic. Catherine: it's a misunderstanding. Catherine: let's talk tomorrow. I didn't reply. They weren't interested in making things right. They wanted me to stay quiet while they rewrote the story. But I had a different script in mind. I opened my laptop. The files were all there: screenshots, emails, payment records, everything I'd discovered in the weeks leading up to this trip. The real reason Catherine had been so obsessed with this birthday weekend wasn't just about her milestone, it was about optics. The Goldwyn empire was cracking, and I had the proof. I clicked save on the folder and named it Exit Strategy. Because the next move wasn't just about canceling a dinner, it was about rewriting the ending. The evening wore on. Room service brought up a charcuterie board I didn't touch. My inbox began flooding with vendor confirmations, refunds processed, bookings voided. The yacht captain sent a polite message expressing regret and wishing the family well. The waterfront estate's manager was less gracious. "We expected professionalism from the Goldwyns," he wrote. I chuckled. Professionalism? From a family who'd spent years treating me like hired help, even while calling me their own. I sat on the floor, leaning against the foot of the bed, the carpet soft under my legs. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I drafted a new message, addressed to a few key journalists, contacts I'd met at industry events, wedding writers who loved behind-the-scenes stories. I didn't send it, not yet. This wasn't about revenge, not entirely. It was about control. And for once I had all of it. At 10:42 p.m., Andrew called again. I picked up. "Sam," he started, his voice low and urgent. "Where are you? We need to talk." I stayed quiet. "You embarrassed my mother," he said. I finally responded. "Your mother embarrassed herself." He sighed. "Look, I know things have been tense, but this weekend is important." "Important to who? To the family? Or to the board members Catherine's trying to impress with a facade of stability?" There was silence. Then, "You don't understand the pressure she's under." I laughed bitterly. "No, Andrew, I understand perfectly, and I'm not your scapegoat. You're making a mistake." "So did you?" I hung up. Outside, the storm that had been threatening all day finally broke. Rain tapped against the window in a steady rhythm. I watched it fall and felt something I hadn't felt in months: relief. The next morning, I woke to a flurry of voicemails and another round of messages. Andrew had shifted tactics, less frustration, more pleading. Andrew: "Sam, please, you don't understand. We can fix this. Let's meet. Just talk to me." Catherine: "Samantha, I'm sure by now you've realized how rash last night was. Don't do anything you'll regret. We're family." The word family had never sounded so hollow. I deleted the messages and threw on a sweatshirt, my face bare, hair in a ponytail. Charleston was quiet at 7 a.m. A few joggers passed me on the Battery, the harbor fog still low, the water muted silver under a gray sky. I needed the air, the space, to decide what came next. Because this wasn't just about a birthday dinner anymore. It was about all the moments they'd pushed me to the side, disguised their dismissals as jokes or tradition, and expected me to smile and keep showing up. The cake-cutting photos I wasn't in, the vacation invitations that arrived after the flights were booked, the wedding where I sat in the back row, his wedding, my wedding. How had I let it get this far? Because I loved him. That was the answer, simple and brutal. Because I thought I was building a life with someone who valued me. Instead, I'd built scaffolding around a man afraid to stand up to his mother. Back at the hotel, I grabbed my laptop and opened the exit strategy folder. Among the files were photos of bank statements, private family email threads, and planning documents Catherine had accidentally sent me months ago. I'd read between the lines then. Now I read every word. The Goldwyn Foundation, Andrew's father's legacy, was in trouble. Donors had pulled out. 2 board members had resigned. There were whispers of mismanaged funds, and Catherine was desperately trying to shore up support. This Charleston birthday weekend wasn't a celebration. It was a cover-up, and I was supposed to be the polished accessory helping hold it all together. No more. I forwarded a copy of the documents to my lawyer, just in case. Then I called Charlotte, my second-in-command at Rivera and Company. She answered on the second ring. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm better than I've been in a while. Are the Charleston vendors fully canceled?" "All done. Some of them weren't happy about it, but the paperwork's airtight. Your signature is the only one on any contract." "Good. I need you to prep something for me. Press release style, but private. I'll explain more in person." "You want me to come down?" "Number, I'll be back in 2 days." A pause. "Sam, are you burning this all down?" I smiled. "Not yet, but I'm holding the match." After we hung up, I showered and got dressed. Not for comfort, but for power. Black slacks, crisp white blouse, hair down, makeup clean and sharp. If they were going to see me today, they'd see me on my terms. I headed to the mansion. The Goldwyn estate in the historic district was less than 10 minutes away, an old-world marvel of antebellum grandeur wrapped in ivy and secrets. I let myself in using the code Catherine had insisted I memorize during event prep. She was in the parlor, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone. When she saw me, she didn't flinch. "Samantha," she said, her tone neutral. "How lovely of you to drop by." "You can drop the act." She raised a brow. "Excuse me?" "I know everything. The board trouble, the fake financials. This whole weekend was a lie, and I was supposed to be the decoration to make it believable." Her lips tightened. "You're being dramatic." "Number, I'm being clear. You used me. You humiliated me. And now, I'm done playing your assistant in designer heels." She stood, placing her cup on the saucer with a soft clink. "You may have canceled the dinner, but if you think that derails the Goldwyn name, you're wrong." "I don't care about your name, I care about mine." She studied me, searching for a crack in my calm. "You always had such ambition," she said finally. "That's why I kept you close. But ambition without loyalty? That's dangerous." "You mean ambition without obedience?" Behind us, Andrew appeared in the doorway. He looked like he hadn't slept, shirt wrinkled, tie missing, jaw tight. "I asked you not to do this," he said, "and I asked you to defend me, once, just once, and you couldn't." He took a step forward. "We can still fix this. I'll talk to my mother." "Too late." I reached into my bag and handed him an envelope. "What's this?" "An itemized invoice, for the planning work, for my time, for the deposits I saved from cancellation. It's fair. More than fair." He looked between the papers and me, disbelief clouding his face. "You're seriously charging us?" "You thought you could erase me. I'm just making sure there's a paper trail." "I loved you," he said, voice low. "Number, you loved what I could do for you." For the first time, he had no answer. I turned to go, but paused at the door. Tell your mother next time she wants to orchestrate a public scene she should remember, some of us know how to run the whole damn show. Outside, the Charleston sun had broken through the clouds. The air was heavy, but the weight on my chest had lifted. It wasn't revenge, it was release, and it was just beginning. That night, I slept soundly, deep and dreamless. The kind of sleep that only arrives when your soul stops bracing for impact. When I woke up, I didn't rush. I brewed fresh coffee, sat on the balcony, and let the Charleston sunrise paint gold over the rooftops. It was the first time I'd really looked at this city, really seen it, and realized how much more beauty there was when I wasn't chasing someone else's approval. By 8 a.m., I was dressed and ready. Black slacks, soft blue blouse, low heels, no statement jewelry, no bold red lipstick. Today wasn't about spectacle, it was about precision. I walked the short distance to the Magnolia Hotel, where Catherine's brunch was set to unfold. As I stepped into the lobby, the concierge gave me a tight smile. "Mrs. Goldwyn," she said cautiously, "we've had some changes come through this morning." I nodded. "Yes, I made those." There was a pause. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a revised contract, one I'd reissued early that morning, cancellation notice, refund receipts, and a note confirming the reservation was officially void. I walked past her toward the event room. A hostess in black stopped me. "I'm sorry, this area is reserved." "I know, I'm the one who reserved it, and I'm also the one who canceled it." She blinked, unsure. I walked to the center of the room. The tables were set, flowers arranged, but no guests yet. I left a copy of the new contract on the table at the front, one that made it perfectly clear who had signed every agreement, and who had voided them. By the time I stepped out into the courtyard, the Goldwyns were arriving. Catherine's heels clicked first. Andrew's voice, low and clipped, cousins murmuring behind them. I leaned against a column and waited. They reached the locked doors and tugged. Confusion painted over their well-moisturized faces. The hostess approached. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Goldwyn. The brunch was canceled this morning." Catherine turned toward me like a queen ready to banish a traitor. "What is the meaning of this?" I stepped forward and handed her the envelope. "You said we shouldn't let this weekend unravel the family. You were right, so I'm letting go before it unravels me." Andrew stared. Catherine gawked. The cousins just watched, eyes wide. I gave them all a small smile. "This isn't revenge, it's clarity. Happy birthday, Catherine." Then I turned and walked away. But that wasn't the end of it. As I rounded the corner, I spotted Elise, Catherine's sister-in-law, trailing behind the group with hesitation in her eyes. She caught up to me, heels clicking quick against stone. "Samantha," she said in a lowered voice, "wait." I stopped but didn't turn. "I just wanted to say, that was brave, and long overdue. I've been watching how they treat you, how they used you. And I'm sorry." Her voice wavered like she was on the edge of saying more. "Thanks, Elise. That means more than you know. If you ever need a witness or someone to back you up, just say the word." I gave her a nod and finally turned. We locked eyes. There was no judgment there, just quiet solidarity. Back at my hotel, I packed in silence, folded each blouse like I was tucking away parts of a life I no longer needed to live. Then I sat on the bed and opened my laptop. A new file, a new name, a new city. There was a retreat space I'd bookmarked months ago. Aspen, mountains, clean air, nothing but sky and pine trees. A place to recalibrate. I booked the ticket. That night, as the sun dipped behind the harbor and the skyline glowed faintly in the distance, I wrote the first page of my new life. Not for them, not for show, just for me. The courtyard emptied slowly, like a party where the music had stopped, but no one knew how to leave. I didn't turn around, not even when I heard Catherine muttering behind me, not when Andrew called out my name, not when one of the cousins half ran to catch up before giving up. The heels of my shoes tapped against the cobblestones in a rhythm steadier than my heartbeat, my spine tall, my pace sure. I was done. Back at my hotel, I changed into jeans and sneakers and booked a flight home. Charleston had been beautiful, but I no longer needed to linger in someone else's fairy tale. I was writing a new one where I was no longer an accessory to someone else's power, no longer a prop in their curated life. Still, I knew the story was only just beginning. By the time my plane landed in Boston, the messages had started again. This time, from clients, partners, board members who had attended Catherine's previous events. Some were confused, others intrigued. A few were already asking me to meet. They wanted the real story, the polished version, the truth whispered over cocktails. I ignored them, for now. Instead, I went to the office. Rivera and Company sat 3 floors above a bakery on Tremont Street. It wasn't flashy, just clean, bright, and full of the kind of quiet power that comes from competence. Charlotte was waiting for me. "Coffee?" she asked, handing me a cup without waiting for an answer. "You're psychic," I said. "Comes with the job." She handed me a thick folder. "Here's the summary we drafted. You'll want to look it over before we send it to your PR contact." Inside were the bones of the narrative, a timeline of events, a list of vendors we'd worked with, an FAQ-style explanation of the cancellation decisions. It wasn't scandalous, it was strategic. We weren't making accusations, we were setting the record straight. "I want this live by Monday," I said. Charlotte nodded. "And the anonymous tip about the Goldwyn Foundation's tax filings?" "Send it. Not from us, of course." "Of course." We worked late into the evening, every detail double-checked, every sentence rewritten until it sounded effortlessly graceful. I didn't want revenge, but I also wouldn't let them rewrite the ending to suit their version of events. When I finally got home, it felt like stepping into a different life. My brownstone was quiet. The lights on timers gave it a warm, lived-in glow. The kitchen still smelled faintly of the lavender candle I'd left burning that morning. I kicked off my shoes, set my phone to Do Not Disturb, and curled up on the couch. It had been a week since the dinner in Charleston, 1 week since I found out I was never meant to be part of their story, and yet, here I was, still standing, still planning. By Friday, the fallout had begun. The brunch that never happened was the talk of every socialite group chat from Charleston to Palm Beach. No one could get a straight answer from Catherine. The official line was unforeseen complications. But word travels. Someone had overheard her shouting in the hotel lobby. Another had seen Andrew pacing in the courtyard, looking like he'd aged 10 years. And of course, someone recognized me walking out with a serene smile. By Sunday, the article dropped. Not from me, not directly. But a well-placed friend in the Society column had written a behind-the-scenes piece about the Goldwyn event. Names weren't mentioned, but the insinuations were clear. Mismanagement, tension, a sudden change in plans. My company was noted for its professionalism and transparency. I didn't gloat, but I did take a long, satisfying sip of coffee. Charlotte burst into my office Monday morning with her phone in hand. 3 new clients want meetings this week. One's a Fortune 500 executive. The other 2 are event committees that used to be firmly in the Goldwyn circle. I raised an eyebrow. What changed? "They did," she smirked. "Turns out they like planners who don't get erased from their own seating charts." I laughed, genuinely this time. The kind of laugh that comes from the chest, not just the throat. There was still fallout to come. Andrew had left 3 voicemails, each more apologetic than the last. Catherine sent an email marked, "Urgent, Family." I filed them both away. The family I wanted wasn't made of people who thought forgiveness came cheap. Instead, I wrote my own closure. A final email. 1 line. "I wish you well. Please direct all further communication to my attorney." And then with a deep breath, I hit send. The screen didn't explode, the world didn't tilt, the past didn't vanish. But something shifted. The page, at long last, turned. The next phase of my life didn't start with fireworks, it began with spreadsheets. There's something grounding about diving headfirst into logistics, vendor lists, timelines, budget proposals. After the storm I'd just walked through, I craved control. And control was something Rivera and Company did better than anyone. The first event came just 10 days after Charleston, a fundraising gala for a local arts foundation, a modest affair compared to the Caldwell's glitzy functions, but it felt like breathing clean air again. Real people, real appreciation, zero condescension. Charlotte and I spent hours building a new framework, one that left no space for manipulation. We rewrote every contract to reinforce our autonomy. No more ghost payments, no more side negotiations. Our clients would work with us directly, or not at all. The energy in the office changed. Sharper, stronger. We weren't just planning parties anymore, we were building boundaries. But even as the company found its new rhythm, I was still relearning how to exist without that old weight. One evening, as I was locking up the office, Charlotte lingered. "You know," she said, "you could write about it." About the Caldwells? Not by name, but the experience, what it's like to rebuild when people expect you to fold. I smiled. Maybe. But that night I opened a blank document and started typing. The rebuild wasn't about vengeance, it was about voice. Every word became a brick in the new foundation I was laying for myself. I stopped tiptoeing around what had happened. I named it. I processed it, I transformed it. Within a month, my calendar was full. Galas, fundraisers, launches, clients who came not just for my taste, but for my tenacity. My story had traveled, not as gossip, but as inspiration. Charlotte printed out one email from a new client and pinned it to the office corkboard. "I want to work with someone who's been through the fire and come out stronger." My past hadn't disqualified me, it had refined me. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid to be seen. It came on a Thursday, a thick, cream-colored envelope with gold embossing, hand-delivered to the office. Charlotte intercepted it on her way in from her morning coffee run. She raised an eyebrow as she dropped it on my desk. "Looks expensive," she said. "Want me to burn it for you?" I smiled faintly. Let's at least see what's inside before we light any ceremonial fires. Inside was an invitation, heavy cardstock, letterpress details, the works. The return address was a familiar one, the estate of Catherine Goldwyn, Charleston. The event? A private dedication ceremony for the new Goldwyn wing at the Carolina Museum of Art. RSVP requested. I stared at it for a long moment. "Don't tell me she's trying to play nice now," Charlotte said, peering over my shoulder. I turned the invitation over in my hand. Either that, or she wants to parade me around like a gracious loser. The woman thrives on optics. "She thrives on control," Charlotte corrected. The silence stretched. I could feel Charlotte watching me, waiting for my reaction, but my brain was already moving 2 steps ahead. If Catherine thought I'd crawl back, she'd miscalculated. If she thought I'd ignore it and let her dominate the narrative, she was mistaken. "What if I went?" I asked quietly. Charlotte blinked. "You're kidding." "I'm not saying I'll accept, but maybe it's time to stop hiding. Let her see what surviving actually looks like." Charlotte leaned against the edge of my desk. "You want to make a statement?" I want to reclaim my name." The news of the event traveled fast. Within 2 days, society pages were already speculating on the guest list. The Goldwyns hadn't fallen out of favor, yet, but the mystery surrounding their last failed event still lingered. People wanted answers, and whether she liked it or not, Catherine needed me to appear magnanimous. I RSVP'd with 2 words, attendance confirmed. No fanfare, no notes, no drama, just facts. The ceremony was scheduled for the following Saturday. That gave me a week to plan, not for an event, but for an entrance. "I want something strong," I told my stylist, "polished, powerful, and impossible to ignore." The result was a tailored navy jumpsuit with sharp shoulders, a cinched waist, and a subtle shimmer that caught the light with every step. Understated elegance. The kind of look that said, "I'm not trying to impress you, but I know you're watching." Charlotte handed me a clutch before I left. "Inside is a press release, just in case." "In case of what?" "In case they try anything." The Carolina Museum of Art was a sprawling white structure that stood like a jewel on a manicured lawn. The new wing, funded by a generous anonymous donor, had a glass facade and curved entryway that looked like something out of a luxury design magazine. As I arrived, I noticed the whispers starting almost immediately. "She's here." "Is that—" I thought they weren't speaking anymore. The attention didn't rattle me. I smiled politely at the gawkers and stepped inside. The air was cool, perfumed with something citrusy and expensive. A string quartet played softly near the entrance. Waitstaff circled with champagne flutes. I didn't drink, not today. Catherine found me near the sculpture garden, just as the program was about to begin. "Meredith," she said, her voice carefully measured. "You look well." So she was pretending nothing had ever happened. How quaint. "Thank you," I replied. "Congratulations on the new wing." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It's been a long time coming." I sipped my sparkling water, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. Finally, she said what we both knew was coming. "I hope we can move forward." I tilted my head. Is that what this is? A chance to mend fences. With a crowd watching. Her smile thinned. Some people forgive privately. Some prefer an audience. And some never apologize at all. I didn't say it aloud. I didn't need to. Instead, I handed her the envelope Charlotte had given me. "Here, just in case you ever want to tell the whole story." She took it with a flicker of uncertainty. "What is it?" "Your second chance." Then I walked away. Not with bitterness, not with vengeance, but with clarity. I didn't need to destroy Catherine Goldwyn. She was doing that all by herself. The fallout from the museum event didn't take long to ripple out. By Monday morning, the press was already stirring. Photos from the event had gone semi-viral on regional socials, especially one shot that captured me and Catherine mid-conversation, the envelope clearly visible between our hands. No captions, no context, just a frozen moment brimming with unspoken tension. It didn't take much for people to fill in the blanks. A society columnist from the Herald messaged Charlotte the next day, "Would Meredith consider commenting on her appearance at the Goldwyn dedication? The public is curious." Charlotte didn't bother asking. She knew the answer. "No interviews," I said. "Not yet." But silence isn't the same as absence, and in the days that followed, something remarkable happened. Clients who had ghosted me after the Charleston disaster reappeared. One offered to double my original fee if I'd take over an upcoming gala. Another, more cautious, simply said, "We should have known better." It wasn't pity. It was respect. Apparently, nothing builds credibility like refusing to collapse under pressure. Charlotte dropped a file on my desk mid-week. "You'll want to see this." Inside were screenshots from a private fundraising chat group. High society shorthand, half-coded but clear enough. The Goldwyns were faltering. There was talk of bad taste, of awkward optics, of donors pulling out quietly from upcoming projects. "They're bleeding support," Charlotte said flatly. "And I haven't said a word." "You didn't have to." I should have felt triumphant. I should have thrown a party, danced in my office, toasted to karma finally catching up. But instead, I just stared out the window and exhaled. Because the truth was, I didn't care about the Goldwyns anymore. What I cared about was what came next. That weekend, I hosted a networking brunch in Cambridge. Small crowd, 30 of the sharpest women I knew from across events, hospitality, design, PR. Some I'd worked with, some I'd once competed against, some I had admired from afar. I called it Reclaim, and it wasn't just an event, it was a declaration. No speeches, just honest conversations over mimosas and rosemary biscuits. We talked about boundaries, about dignity, about saying no even when it costs you. And when one of the younger planners, barely 26 and still unsure how to bill confidently, asked, "But what if we lose the client?" I leaned in and said, "You'll find a better one." Because I had. Later that night, Charlotte posted a photo of us from the brunch. Nothing flashy, just two women laughing over coffee, sunlight pouring in through tall windows. She captioned it simply, "Some things you rebuild stronger." By Monday, I'd been invited to speak at a national event industry conference in D.C. The panel? Leadership Through Crisis. I said yes, But it wasn't until I was packing my carry-on that I realized something else had shifted. I hadn't thought about Andrew in over a week. Not in anger, not in longing, not at all. He'd tried to call a few times, once left a voicemail at 2 a.m., half drunk by the sound of it, saying, "I never should have let them treat you that way." Too late. Guilt isn't redemption. I deleted the message, and that was that. At the DC conference, I stood before a ballroom of strangers and told the story without names. Just the facts, the missing seat, the stolen credit, the quiet rage. I talked about what it means to be erased, not just personally but professionally. I ended with a line I hadn't planned. Survival is not the same as silence, and rebuilding doesn't require permission. The applause wasn't polite, it was thunderous. Afterward, a woman in her 60s found me backstage. She ran a nonprofit for displaced women. She said, "We teach them how to survive. But what you're doing? You're teaching them how to take the pen back." That night, I cried, not because I was sad, but because, for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. It was a quiet Thursday morning when the envelope arrived. No return address, heavy cream paper, handwritten in that neat, almost obsessive script I recognized instantly, Catherine's. Charlotte found it in the incoming mail pile and brought it to me without comment. We both just stared at it for a second, like it might explode. "I can shred it," she offered. I shook my head. "Number, I'll read it. Alone." Back in my office, I sat down and opened it carefully, like I was handling something toxic. Because, in a way, I was. Inside was a single-page letter. No apology, no acknowledgment of what she or Andrew had done, no mention of Charleston, just narrative. Catherine did what she always did best. She told a story, one where things had spiraled out of control, where misunderstandings had unfortunately compounded, and where she deeply regretted that our professional relationship came to such an abrupt end. Then the final line. "Should you ever wish to return to the fold, you know there will always be a place for you at the table." The table. My God, even now she was still trying to rewrite it. I folded the letter, slipped it back into the envelope, and placed it in the drawer beside my desk. Not out of sentiment, but as evidence, proof of how far I'd come. That afternoon, I walked through the space we'd just signed a lease on, a sleek, loft-style second office in the Seaport District. It would double as a showroom and creative studio, my dream space. Charlotte was already imagining modular walls, lighting rigs, branding decals. "You know," she said, running her hand over the exposed brick, "I always thought this would happen, just maybe not this fast." I smiled. Neither did I. The truth was, my business had tripled in the past 6 months. Clients loved the work, yes. But more than that, they respected the boundaries. We didn't chase prestige anymore. We chose people who respected process. Every contract was clear. Every vendor paid on time. Every seating chart triple-checked. "I never told you," Charlotte added as we reviewed the final lease terms, "but 2 of Catherine's old assistants applied to intern here." "What did you say?" "I said we'd consider them next season." We both laughed, not out of cruelty, but because somehow we had survived that world and built something better in its place. Later that week, I found myself at the city courthouse, not for anything dramatic, just paperwork. The final signatures on the business restructuring. But as I waited in line, I spotted a familiar face near the clerk's desk. Andrew. He looked tired. Not just physically, but in that deep, soul-worn way of someone who had spent too long pretending. He didn't see me at first. He was too focused on whatever forms he was filling out. I could have walked away, but instead I approached quietly and said, "Didn't expect to see you here." His head snapped up. "Meredith," he breathed. "Wow. You look—" "Don't," I said. "Just don't." A long silence stretched between us. "I've been meaning to call you," he said finally. "Don't," I repeated. "Not unless you plan on saying something real." He looked down at the papers in his hand, then back at me. "Catherine and I aren't working together anymore. She's stepping back." I nodded. "And what about you?" He shrugged. trying to figure that out. "You had a chance," I said quietly. "You could have stood up, said something, anything." "I know." Another silence. "Well," I said, stepping away. "Good luck figuring it out." He didn't stop me, and that was closure, not a grand apology, not a romantic gesture, just the absence of pursuit, the acknowledgment, finally, that we were done. That night, I hosted a client appreciation dinner at the new loft space. We kept it simple: local wines, small bites, live acoustic music. The walls were lined with photos from our favorite events: birthday galas, nonprofit launches, even a backyard wedding that had gone viral for its hand-painted dance floor. As I looked around the room, I realized something profound. These people weren't just clients. They were collaborators, allies, friends. No one here expected me to be silent, invisible, or small. Toward the end of the night, a young woman approached me, nervous, eyes wide, hands clasped in front of her like she was still deciding whether to speak. "Hi," she said. "I just wanted to say, your story really helped me." I blinked. "Sorry, my story?" She smiled shyly. "The panel you spoke on in DC? My professor made us watch it. I'm studying nonprofit PR and, well, I just switched from working for someone who sounded a lot like your old clients." I chuckled. "That bad, huh?" She nodded. "But hearing you talk about walking away, it gave me permission to start over." Her voice wavered just a little. "So, thank you." I didn't know what to say, except maybe, "You're welcome, and I'm glad you walked away too." As she turned to go, I realized that the echo of what had happened, Charleston, the missing seat, all of it, had become something else entirely. Not just a warning, a wake-up call, and maybe even a kind of beacon. 6 months later, I stood in front of a full room at a conference in New York. Not a gala, not a wedding, not even a client pitch, a keynote panel on resilience in entrepreneurship. When the moderator introduced me, there was a ripple of recognition. Some from my work, some, undoubtedly, from the story. I stepped up to the mic and took a breath. "I used to plan other people's dreams," I began, until one day I realized I wasn't even invited to the table I built. There it was, the truth, stripped of pretense, no scandal, no gossip, just fact. The audience leaned in. I told them the story, not with names but with lessons, about the danger of silence, about how professionalism isn't the same as invisibility, about how some tables weren't built for you, and how sometimes you have to walk away to build your own. Afterward, they lined up to talk. Students, small business owners, a few women in luxury suits who gave me quiet, knowing nods. I left with 5 new inquiries in my inbox and something even more valuable: peace. That night, back in my hotel, I curled up with a glass of wine and reread a card Charlotte had given me just before the trip. On the front, it said, in clean gold script, "Don't ask for a seat, build your own damn table." I laughed. She always knew the right kind of dramatic. Back in Boston, the loft studio had turned into a second home for Rivera and Company. We weren't just thriving, we were evolving. Charlotte had taken on a partner title. We'd added 2 junior planners, a part-time social media lead, and an intern we'd hired from that university panel. Every single person at the company knew the story, not because it defined us, but because it shaped how we moved. Transparent contracts, firm boundaries, mutual respect. No client, no matter how wealthy or connected, could buy their way into crossing the line again. One Friday, I walked into the office early. The team was out setting up for a weekend charity auction. Alone, I made coffee, opened the windows, and let the breeze roll through. On my desk sat another envelope. Cream. Heavy. Handwritten. This one from Andrew. No letter, just a printout. A newspaper clipping from the Boston Herald's business section. Headline, "Caldwell Holdings under federal investigation." Below it, a sticky note. "For what it's worth, I never forgot what you said. I'm sorry." I stared at it for a while, then fed it through the shredder. Not out of pettiness, just closure. The story didn't need revisiting. That weekend, we hosted our largest event yet, a benefit concert at the Charles River Esplanade, raising money for inner-city youth art programs, 10,000 attendees, 6 months of planning, zero drama. As the final song played and the skyline glittered across the water, I stood with Charlotte backstage, watching the crowd sway beneath string lights and stars. She nudged me. "Still think about it sometimes?" "Sometimes," I admitted, "but less and less." I meant it. The ghost of Charleston was just that now, a ghost, no longer haunting me, just a chapter I'd finished reading, one that taught me everything I needed to build what came next. "You know," she said, "we've got 3 national sponsors asking for exclusives. You ready to scale again?" I grinned. "Let's do it." And we did. 2 years later, Rivera and Company expanded to a second city, New York, then a third, Austin. By our 5th anniversary, we'd turned down more high-profile clients than we accepted, and still doubled revenue. Because we weren't chasing clout, we were choosing dignity. Sometimes people still ask me about the incident. They bring it up gently, like it's a bruise I might flinch at. But I don't. Because I know now. What happened wasn't my failure. It was my freedom. They tried to humiliate me, to break me, to remind me of my place. What they didn't know was that I'd already found it, not at their table, but at the one I built. And every time I sit down at it, with my team, with clients who respect us, with the women we mentor, I feel the power of something no one can take from me. My name, my voice, my seat.